in Ukraine, real estate takes more than 50% of investment portfolios. Because of lack of investment in stocks and bonds, in Ukraine, real estate is a key for investment decisions. You know that in the United States, for example, or in Europe, real estate is an alternative investment, and it takes from 10 to 15%. But here in Ukraine, it's a key to understand real estate. So that's why our panel discussion is dedicated to real estate. Let me introduce our speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, a round of applause to our first speaker. It's Nick Cotton. Nick is a managing director of Cushman and Wakefield, and Nick is a young, true legend of our real estate market because he has been working there more than 25 years. And Nick knows almost everything about Ukrainian real estate. Yeah?
Not only real estate.
Not only real estate, yes, thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to present you Martin Hormuth. Martin is German, and his recent deal is a Romanian real estate fund with a total value of asset more than 500 million euros. Here in Ukraine, Martin was managing director of Steel Real Estate, and he was representative of GTC here, managing director of GTC. And Martin was a representative of Commerce Bank 8 years ago. So thank you, Martin, for joining us. And I'm very happy to welcome Marco Toson. Buongiorno, Marco. Marco is honored consul of Ukraine in Italy. He and his team has been doing a lot to bring Italian investors here into Ukraine and in creation new businesses there. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to present you Dmitry Korniienko. Dmitry is the head of corporate real estate in NAI, and his company deals like a bridge between Ukrainian and local investors, and Dmitry is attorney at law. I'm very happy to be among my colleagues and my peers. I am a level 3 candidate for level 3 examination next year, and I hope our discussion will bring a lot to us. So let's start. Our first question is about commercial real estate. You know that commercial real estate consists of offices, logistics, and shopping malls. A lot of years ago, Nick told me that there are only 3 key success factors in commercial real estate. They are location, next location, and the third one, location. Nick, would you be so kind as to tell whether the situation has been changed and maybe there are other factors of success in commercial real estate? It's working.
Are we working? Okay. Yeah. God, how naive I was. Location. I would say that today it's pricing, and pricing. Mm-hmm. You know, there is at long last, and there's been really an absence of true market transactions, effectively since 2012, really, in this market. We've witnessed in the course of the last 6 to 9 months some genuine investor interest and transactions in terms of commercial real estate in Ukraine. We've seen the likes of Dragon buying a couple of office buildings. We've seen a Renaissance office building being sold. We've transacted the sale of the Galamco Kopylov logistics facility. We saw Horizon Rosetka buying the Terminal Brovary from Secure Management. All of these transactions have all really happened within the course of the last 12 months or so. You know, and that's a quite profound increase in activity before then. And that's been driven by pricing. There's no debt, yeah. The occupational markets, certainly in terms of offices, are massively improved, and we're actually now seeing rental uplift and shortage in some areas of office space. But what's been driving it is an underpriced market. You know, we're talking yield still, 12%-ish, 13%-ish. But when you're looking at rents that are unsustainably low, then that is really the green light for equity investors to come in, and the transactions have really all been through equity.
Okay, thank you. Martin, I would like you to add. What do you think? Can I give you mine?
Is it working? Can you hear me? Yes. I think Nick is absolutely right. I had a mentor in this business, a man who invested, who brought a company from 6 million equity up to 3 billion, and I asked him once, what is the reason for success in real estate? And he said, 50% is luck, and the rest is a little bit of management. So I believe if we speak about the 50%, and I absolutely agree that luck it has to be on your side when you do real estate investments, because there are so many factors that you simply cannot anticipate when you enter into an investment, because real estate is a long-term investment. It is also an investment into the economy of a country, and it's an investment into the future of the country, because you're banking into prospects. So the key to success in real estate, apart from luck, is basically to have a thorough due diligence into all aspects. And I understand you're all financial experts, and it boils down to running spreadsheets. It boils down to spending money for good, expensive lawyers, especially in Ukraine, but in a country that has title issues like Ukraine. This is very important, and basically to do your homework. That's the key to success.
Okay, I would like you, Marca, to bring your opinion. As a representative of Italy, what do you think about marketing, and could you add something to the key success factors in commercial real estate? Okay. Let me give you mine.
No, me represent Ukraine in Italy, so but it's anyway, I'm trying to connect the two countries in all the field. Yeah, I'm coming from a little bit of experience on the real estate. I'm working here for the last 20-25 years, so I see in Ukraine a lot of up and down, different things. So real estate, for my opinion, is also remain a good opportunity in general. Okay, I see the last changement of Ukraine, the last 5 years, 4-5 years, was a big disaster. And a lot of Italian people was investing here 5 years before, and they lose also a lot of money because the real estate business was quite high, and but the trend was good, and so everybody, when the trend is good, normally they put the money and they say, okay, they will grow more and more. I mean, it's the wrong moment to invest in the real estate, or the wrong moment to invest in things. I believe, and also my expert, because I create a different support with different people in the legal investment fund. We create a fund also to invest here in Ukraine, so we create different structure.
Do you hear it? Private equity, real estate fund?
Yeah. Yes.
Guys?
And we create different structure in order to make more facility how to approach the market, which is the people that living here. Okay, the people that are using to visit this country, they know the market very well, but the Italian people or international people know very low about this market and very scared about this market. In general, the market of Ukraine is very scary to everybody about it, because the news, because the activity is. But for our opinion, compare with other market, can be also with some option, because still there is a lot of problem here, but there is the big option, to be very, very interesting market. Especially in this moment, more than before the crisis, before the the problem of Donbass, the problem of Crimea, you know, is now much more interested, and it will, for my opinion, will have an interest for the next years in growing. We register a lot of reinvestment of the capitals that was from the main people, also Ukrainian people, allocated abroad, and they reinvest in the market. Okay, so all the big capital of the big group that was and they are outside of Ukraine, they are coming back to Ukraine, and especially invest in the real estate and the things. Just to give you some data, big people, I cannot say the name.
It's understandable.
Big people before was investing a lot in the outside market, creating big platform in other markets, so investing in different platform. In this moment, they are reinvesting their money from outside to the inside, because still Ukraine is quite interesting market for recapitalize and remaking their assets in the market. Okay, some real estate have some crisis, have some problem, not reduced so much, reduced but not so much as the crisis compare. So if you evaluate the crisis and not so much, no, it's not in the same line of graphic, but decrease. Okay, for my opinion. I'm not specialist. Maybe after you can intervention. I see your face, but you have something different. But I speak about practical things and. Okay. But anyway, you know, there was some reduction on the price, rational things, and we believe that could be some interest in the next year. For sure, Ukraine has some big problem on stabilization, on taxation, on investment, of stability of this. But still, the percentage, we think can be quite interesting. This is why we created this fund, we are creating this support, and also quite nice money is investing in this.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
Dmitry, would you be so kind as to add some thoughts on this? What are key success factors in commercial real estate here in Ukraine?
If we were speaking about investment climate of real estate, I want to mention that I've been on a real estate exhibition in Munich 3 weeks ago and spoke with a lot of investors from different countries, and I mentioned that everyone is looking on Ukraine, everyone is, especially Cyprus, especially Luxembourg, not only for reinvest but also to invest, because hot markets like Poland, like Hungary or Romania, they are lacking of high yield properties, and there are many of them in Ukraine. But I think they are waiting for a green light. They are waiting for good signs, good examples from other players. And we are having some. We are having the activity which Nick told us. We have an activity of Ashan Group, which are buying caravan, which are building their own shopping center in Kyiv, Rivgosh. We can see that they've been investing by IFC. We can see that Novus also gets investment financing from Reconstruction Bank. And if it will be another 5 or 10 loud examples on the market, I think we will see this kind of improvement. And another reason why I'm so positive is because owners previously, 10 years ago, for example, when I was a project manager of building Gulliver Center in Kyiv, we were doing everything by ourselves without professionals, because there was no any professionals, no consulting companies which expertise, and everyone was doing and learning by mistakes. Right now it's a totally different market with a lot of consultants and professionals which can help manage not only financial side of the project, but developing, managing, etc. So these two factors could lead us to better.
So service providers
market,
are very important. Yeah, thank you very much for that. And dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to bring your questions to our speakers. Let them share their experience and their thoughts. So the question is key success factors in commercial real estate. Maybe you have some practical examples. Maybe you want to ask. If you have questions, just raise your hand and I will come. Yeah, thanks.
Michael McMillan, you talk about commercial real estate in terms of hotels and office buildings, but why not residential apartment buildings as well, or apartment buildings?
I rely on the information I just received from Nick before this discussion. Basically, what we see here in Ukraine is a lot of residential development to an extent that we are seeing more and more supply to the market, and at the same time we're seeing shrinking pricing. We're seeing shrinking margins, and this is something we're not only experiencing in Kiev. We have this in regional cities. I've been to Lviv recently, and I was just surprised how much the level of construction there is. So what we are seeing in the residential market is a cannibalization, what I call it. Basically, the margins are shrinking, and at one point, simply development will no longer be profitable. This is related to the fact that most residential developers have enormous capacity, and they build up this capacity in the booming years. And it is still profitable because they can still sell from the plan. But at one point we're getting to this. Sorry, Nick, I'm taking all your arguments. But at one point we will get to the point where either there will have to be a mortgage lending system stepping in, or we will see a total standstill in the residential development. It's something that is like already carved in stone, and this is actually a process. If there will need to be thoughts on mortgage banking, on lending systems for the residential development, or we will face serious problems. I just don't know when exactly, but it will come if the movement continues.
I would like, first of all, to thank you for your question, because residential real estate is a key topic here in Ukraine, and our thoughts was to discuss it at the end. Okay. But it's in our hands. Let's discuss residentials just now.
Okay. There is, as Martin mentioned, there is a huge amount of residential development going on, not just in Kiev, but throughout the regions of Ukraine. I think the question was really more aligned to, why isn't there investment into residential? I mean, there's two ways of investing into residential. It's either buying it for your own occupation, or of course, there's buying it for buy-to-let. There is certainly transactional activity of people buying for their own occupation. One of the problems with buy-to-let in Ukraine, first of all, there are legal issues in relation to, let's say, landlord and tenant behavior. But the overriding issue with the investment market in residential is that there are factors which suggest that the residential market is still going to be subject to downward capital values. And even buying residential today in Kiev and going through the leasing process, you're still really struggling to get anywhere near a 10% yield. If you're buying residential, you're going to be at between 6 to 10% yield, with risks of downward capital values. So why do it? Why not go and buy offices, logistics, even retail, which is underpriced and has upward potential? And that really sums the reason, in my view, why so few people are buying residential as investments. There are some, who are buying a floor here or a floor there in really what I'd say are outstanding buildings. But it's really quite unusual. It tends to be very much down to individuals looking to deploy spare equity, and it's not institutional.
If you are speaking about residential real estate, there are some projects here in Ukraine when in creation of serviced apartments. When what Nick told, then you have a number of flats or number of residents to buy and let them out. And I know that big international hotel groups like Residor or Accor, they're looking to create such projects in a resort. For example, in Odessa, where it's possible to create projects with very high level of service. But let's return to residential, and thank you again for your question later on. If you are speaking about commercial real estate, we have another question.
My question concerns also residential area. A previous response was concerning the anticipated stall in development of residential area. When do you expect this happen? Thank you.
If I knew, I would.
There are a lot of journalists, and you will be quoted.
No. Basically, there is something that is kind of if the process that we have right now, large volume of construction, new projects coming to the market, less interest on the investment side. If this were to continue, then this should come to a standstill within, I would say, okay, don't quote me, but I would say 2 years, no more, maybe quicker. There's something I think we should mention as well, which is demographics, because residential has a little bit to do with the population that will eventually live there. And we apart from the fact that I don't know if the census in Ukraine reflects the true reality at this point, we simply don't know what the demand will be. If you take we had yesterday a discussion when you talk about a country like Turkey, you have a young generation, first-time home buyers eating up the market, and you have these huge residential developments. I haven't seen too many Ukrainian young women with 4 or 5 children lately, so the demographics in the long run in Ukraine will also have an impact on the residential. But nevertheless, we all know that there is we have a qualitative problem also in the residential. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on, but basically, it is at one point, it is really time to start thinking about a mortgage system and a system for owner-occupied lending that really allows average earners in Ukraine to acquire new quality housing. That would probably help the market a lot, but we all know there are so many factors that play into this, so I cannot give a definite answer on this.
I would like to bring more statistic if you are speaking about mortgage bank lending. So in Ukraine, mortgage bank lending is near 1% comparing with GDP. In countries in Europe, it's near 20%, and in United States, it's much more higher, even 70%. So you are absolutely right, and Martin, you are absolutely right that there are 2 points of view now on our real estate market. First, people thought that it's too much residentials, and it's another bubble on that market. But there are other people who think that mortgage bank lending or other factors could boost the market. Dmitry, could you please share your opinion on that topic?
Answering your question, I would like to add that if we're asking when, we should look at overall economical situation in Ukraine. If incomes of citizens, of population will grow, it will definitely help this market to grow. Also, it's a huge difference between quality of residential projects developing right now, and it's also comes with a demographic situation, because younger people will not want to buy a apartment in a building which stays in the middle of nowhere. So they want to have all the infrastructure here and nearby schools, restaurants, shops. Therefore, some of projects will not only survive, but they will be successful in residential.
Yeah. Thank you. We have another question.
I have a question concerning pricing on the commercial real estate market as a crucial factor for transaction activity. For example, last year, Pyramida Shopping Mall, having gross building area of 16,000 square meters, was sold for about $20 million. So question, what is fair capitalization rate in Ukraine now? Fair, yeah. What approaches are used to price to value commercial real estate now? Thank you.
Nick, as far as I understand, you are...
Okay.
Marco, I could help you.
Okay. I mean, to answer from the end of the question, how do we value real estate in Ukraine? We have a big valuation team. Most standing assets are valued either from a comparable method, so it's what is being marketed subject to certain adjustments, or a capitalization rate, okay, which is what we're talking about here, which is investments. Capitalization rates, you have to take them with a pinch of salt in Ukraine. I mean, if you're looking at the logistics transactions that have happened, if you apply a capitalization rate to some of those, you're actually down to, 10-11%, which is a nonsense for logistics in a country such as Ukraine, with the risks of Ukraine and the absence of debt finance. The reason why it's so low in logistics is because it's under-rented in today's market. We're now seeing logistics rents between $2.80 to $4 a square meter. Nobody's building. Vacancies now come below 6% in Kiev region. So investors buying at, let's say, between 10 and 11% yields on logistics, first of all, they're typically buying them for their own occupation. We've seen that with ATB. We've seen that with Rosetka and Horizon. But if you translate that into a yield, it's a very, very, very aggressive yield indeed. And it's simply reflecting the fact that they're buying logistics space materially below replacement cost. Yeah, you will not acquire a piece of land, service it, do all your projecting, and build a modern logistics center for the prices that we're selling at. We're selling at between, let's say, $300 to $350 a square meter. Finished logistics space, some of it occupied or ready for occupation. You wouldn't deliver it to the market for less than $450. That's what's driving logistics. In terms of offices, we're seeing yields. Again, it's a yield-based valuation, and we're seeing typically between 11 to 12% for Kiev city centre for B+ grade. There hasn't been A-class space transacted. Okay, retail malls. With the exception of Pyramida, there's not really been transactions. One of the problems with retail malls is that retail has really gone through the mill. There's still a lot of malls out there that are based on largely turnover rents, and there's a lot of opacity about the actual tenancy structures. But the quality retail malls are big, and without the availability of debt, there really isn't a market. So what's happening? We're seeing transactions to local players out of equity, whether it's for their own occupation or as an investment. And therefore, we're typically looking lot values, between $5 to $25 million US. Shopping centres will typically be coming in at $50 to $60, $70 million. Very few people have that availability of equity, and there's not debt. There's not commercial debt available for investments. EBRD, EIC, etc., are not going to finance investment transactions. So with retail, quality retail, we're not as yet seeing any liquidity. Okay.
Martin, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to add, Nick is absolutely right. I just wanted to add the correlation between availability of debt and yields, basically. What people do is in today's world, investors have the opportunity to go any place they want to invest in real estate, and they're looking for the return on equity. So what you have in Ukraine is basically you have either no lending available or loan to value, meaning you buy for 10 and the bank gives you 5. Loan to LTVs that are very low, and when the reason why, for example, if you were to invest in the Eurozone today in a country like take Germany or Switzerland, basically you get almost 100% from the bank. So your equity needed is really low, and that's why the yields are at ridiculous level. It brings me actually to the point that Marco was raising, that some of the Ukrainian funds are coming back to the country. It has not only to do with the beauty of the market in Ukraine, but it also has to do that those markets abroad have performed quite well. They're very liquid. They can liquidate very easily. So the yield, when you look at the yield and the cap rates in Ukraine, this is also basically a mirror of the situation of the financial markets. And needless to say, a full recovery of not a recovery, but an upswing in the commercial real estate market is only possible once the banks will basically get to terms with their balance sheets, and they will go out and lending. And one is to have a bank, and if you go to a bank I'm an ex-banker, I can say this. If you go to a banker today in Ukraine or any market in the world, and you ask him, are you lending? He will say yes. It's just the conditions under which he will lend are sometimes in Ukraine so ridiculous that you stay home or you ask your grandmother to give her the savings to buy the apartment. This is the situation we have in Ukraine. And we have a lack of transparent transactions to really say what the cap rates or what the yields really are, because normally when you look at investors, opportunistic investors, they would say, I want 20% on equity in my real estate investments. So you do a residential development in Munich or God knows where, you get your 20, 30, 50% on your equity. Here in Ukraine, you have the choice to go into Nix Logistics, and you get your 10% because you have no debt available. And this is the reason why we are still, not recovering in this market. It has to do purely with the situation in the banking system and a not professional workout system, because the road to recovery in a real estate market starts with a sell-off, and the sell-off brings me back to what Nick said in the beginning. It's pricing, and the pricing of the banks for their non-performing loans and assets is not ridiculous enough, so we can speak of a sell-off that will bring ideally a recovery. And this is where we are, and that's why a 10% yield below replacement value is actually not a great deal. That's what it is for international investors, and this is why we don't have international investors. That's simple.
Marco, in this circle between banks and commercial real estate, could entrepreneurs be helpful? Working, yeah.
Yes. Entrepreneurs, for me, is very, very important. Play a good role. What I can comment, okay, you are speaking very technically. I'm not technical as you, okay, but I can a little bit translate a little bit what is, for my opinion, is missing in Ukraine. In Italy, the market of real estate is quite tough and quite competitive. Okay, so the margin, is very difficult, and a lot of construction company, a lot of company that invest also in other country, as Czech Republic, as Romania. In Romania, just in the last 10 years, 17,000 company from my region transport their production from Veneto region to Romania. Just to give you some number. Okay, 17,000. Okay, just my city, Padova, close to Venezia, registered in the Chamber of Commerce 90,000 company.
Unbelievable.
Okay, capital of Vicenza is another agora, city close to Padova. The turnover of Vicenza is like the turnover of Greece. Okay, just to give you.
We all know Venice.
Okay, but try to make you understand that the city, the place in Italy is very competitive, very competitive. How to compete in the market, to make something better, to compete something, not just thinking about square meter, but to compete about quality, compete about some solution better, what you can realize, what you can do. Okay, so what is missing a lot in Ukraine, from my opinion, I'm not a specialist, but from my opinion, is a little bit of different from standardization, different from just constructing by square meter, but making a little bit upper level, and selling the product, with much more quality, much more things that can be in the market, appreciate and have a value of that. If you see in the commercial center, and if you evaluate the commercial center that is existing here, you can see very big difference. We are opening different shops from Italian here, where we select the commercial center where to open. Where the commercial center that is working and working here. The place that you can pay this lease or not that lease because it's working or not working. The occupancies of this is better or worse than that. Because the solution and the quality and the thing is done in such type of thing. So what is missing here, from my opinion, now that we are incenting a lot this type of thing, is complete the building, complete the things with a solution that create a little bit upper value of what we can do it. This, I think, is a winning system to make it. If you consider another point, the price of production, the price of construction of a building here, for my opinion, the salary of one construction company, okay, I think it's a little bit less than Italian. If you compare the salary, in Ukraine, you have a medium level, what you say, 150, 200 euro per
something like this.
Something like this. In Italy is in Italy is 1,500, 2,000 euro per month. Okay, one person. So if you have a work activity so different, the value of the construction must be 10 times difference. Okay, but there is not. So there is no this difference. Why? Why? So it's meaning efficiency, how you construct, efficiency, how you do it. And when we are working in Italy, we work with margin like this. So if we make a mistake, you're working like a margin, very large. Okay. So if we make more efficiency in the construction, more efficiency in the style, in the luxury, in the presentation of the things, I think there is big margin. You must work on that things. And what we are doing here now, try to insert some type of platform of idea to performing better the activity, either residential, either commercial, okay, to make it more efficient on these type of things.
So as far as I understand, you want to bring the way made in Italy here in Ukraine.
I try. I try.
As far as I understand, Dmytro wants to add something.
Marco, but we shouldn't forget about that labor cost is only 20% of square meter, but still it's a huge difference, and we shouldn't forget about if we are speaking about fair price, there are still a lot of risks involved in property investment. That's why cap rate is higher. And as example of this situation is public sales of Respublika shopping center in Kilseva Road. This center should be the best center. It's 300,000 square meters. It's 80% finished on construction, and it's on public sale now for $40 million, which is 5 times cheaper than actual construction price, or even more cheaper. So this kind of property on sale could tell us that economical or investment factors are not the only one in development and construction in Ukraine.
Okay, thank you very much for your opinion. As far as I understand, there are other questions. You?
Just one short question in between concerning residential. What is the supply and demand pattern if you compare the lower end and the high end of the market. So I mean low quality, which may be the majority of objects, and higher quality. Can you differentiate, or is it more or less the same?
I honestly can't give you, accurate figures on volumes. We don't trade in residential real estate. We do valuations for a lot of the developers, and we do land sales for residential. My personal view, and I'd say it's personal rather than professional, is that when you look at most capital cities, there's a very big differential between values in the city centre and values in the outskirts. Yeah, you know that if you take Amsterdam or Paris, I mean London's always an exception, but you take Amsterdam, Munich, etc. I would anticipate that if you're paying $1,000, in the equivalent of Oberlin, then when you come to Ivana Franka Street, which is very close to my heart, you would anticipate in a typical capital city that you might be at $5,000 or $6,000 a square metre. There's a very big differential between centre and outskirts. And that used to be the case to a degree in Kiev as well. What I've seen in Kiev over the course of the last 8 years is that the value differential has really compressed. And therefore I would say that somehow there's a bit of a disconnect, that either the out-of-centre apartments are disproportionately too expensive or the central apartments are disproportionately cheap. I'm not quite sure which way that falls, to be honest, but I think there should be more of a differential. My expectation is that price falls as and when I think they will come, and I agree with Martin on that, will be more in relation to the outskirts where there's huge volumes ongoing, where they're targeting, obviously the smaller apartments, the younger people, a lot of internally displaced peoples, particularly when we go to regional cities like Odessa and Kharkov. There's huge volumes going on there, and it's being bought up by internally displaced people. But let's talk about Kiev. There's huge volumes going, and I think that's where we're going to see massive oversupply ultimately, and that's going to push down further the values more in the outskirts than in the centre. I think well-conceived, well-developed city centre apartments will, to a degree, maintain their values. I know I didn't answer your question, but it's sort of half got there.
I want to add some statistic. If you are speaking about low-quality apartment, the portion increase from 10 to 25% for the last 2 years, and new small apartments like smart apartments, now they became one of most important in buying apartments here in Ukraine. And we have, thank you again for your question, and we have another question.
I have a question. Actually, you have all different expertise. So I wanna, if you can share all of your idea, how would you rank Ukraine's commercial real estate, like from top to down, like logistics, retail, whatever, residential, office, and so on. And next question will be for Martin and Marco. Like you said that a few years ago, before like during Yanukovych time, you have many Italians who invested here in real estate and they lost money. So as far as I understand, during Yanukovych time, maybe a little bit more stability, particularly before the crisis, but the situation was not so much different. So it's always about greed, and fear to lose money and greed to get money. So with a negative interest rate on deposit in Europe, don't you think, you probably, I don't know if you follow the financial market, that Tajikistan, with all the situations there, they got subscription for bonds like 10 times. Ukraine got like 10 times. So it's huge amount of money in Europe, and that Eurobank, central bank, flooring with quantitative easing. Don't you think that people just go here because the yield is still better than in Europe? So there are